Alright, welcome back to part 2 of code analysis for our interactive game media. Now today what I'm going to be going over, I think I'm going to go over the animation and all that, basically talking about it, from stuff such as shooting to handle animation to all that. So yeah, let's get into it. So the shoot attack is the easiest one. So basically when the left mouse button is pressed, the character animation, basically the animation for shooting is going to be played. And then we're going to add a delay of 0.2 seconds to do once and spawn our bow actor. And now the reason for this is because we don't want to allow people to be able to spam down the bow so they could rapidly click it. So essentially what we did is then we add a retriggerable delay. So it takes about 0.5 to 0.7 seconds in order for the character to actually be able to shoot again. And what it's going to do is going to make the transform. It's going to break the transform and all that. The release key, basically when you release it, you go back into your idle animation and all that. So the spawn transform, the area where it spawns is going to be the area in which it's going to get the world location. So essentially where you are right now, and it's going to spawn the arrow where you are on your character at the moment. And what it's going to do is going to use the arrow 1 area on our character by here, and that is where it's going to spawn the actual animation or the bow or the arrow. So yeah, that's that pretty much explained. It's really easy. You can see it right here. The scale of it is going to be 0.1 just to keep it small. It's really easy. Now character animations, why I used this was so that I could be allowed to use a whole range of animation, and you'll be able to see it. Where is it with the character animations? By here. So the update animation, this is going to handle all of my animation. It basically, so update animation is a custom event. You're going to switch on the animation for the character, and here you can see all the different sections. Now I didn't need to include falling because we don't have that, nor running because that's on automatically. You have an idle animation, so the idle, it's going to set the flip book for the idle animation for the sprite. That's really easy. Basically, when you stand still, it's going to play it, so not a lot has to go into it. The death animation, however, so the death animation is by here. So the flip book is for the sprite by here. And essentially, the death animation will play when the character's health reaches 0. This is the whole thing I went over in the health system in the part 1. And this is all of it. It's a lot of code, but I went over it in the first part, so yeah. The jumping animation. So that's not too hard. Set flip book, sprite Viking 2, basically the jump thing. And what you wanted to do for that is for the input action jump, when it's pressed, you set the character animation for jump. And when it's released, you set the character animation for idle. It's not that hard at all. So that's all that talked about. It's really not hard at all, to be honest. When it came to select the idle new to the run, basically it was just a switch thing. So if it's false, it's idle new. If it's true, it's run. You use a greater than float. So if it's 0, mobility at 0 for the velocity, you're idle. If it's any greater, you're going to be going into the run animation. So that's not hard at all. Here's the jumping animation. So when the input action release, you can change this in the world settings. Mine is currently the spacebar. When it's pressed, you're going to have a jump. And I sent a branch because this is for the wall jump, which is down here. I'll be talking about this in a moment. If it's released, you're going to stop jumping. And essentially what it's going to do is that it's just the same thing. It just stops the character from jumping when it's released, just to keep it in order. However, the thing with this, if the condition isn't any of these, it's going to register the character to be falling, and essentially that's when the character goes through the map and basically end the game. So that's interesting. True and false. So this part is a custom event part. So essentially what I started off with a custom event. So it's a wall jump event. And then you do line trace by channel. Now what you're going to do here is having a minus and a positive float. Now the reason for this is because you want to understand when you're able to include another jump and when you're not to include. So it's going to get your actor location. You can see two of them there. We need two of them so that it can understand whether it's on a plus, on pluses. So like whether to do with the capsule collision. So if the capsule collision interacts with a wall, it will allow another jump. And essentially with this, with the plus velocity part, it's going to have a float. Float. Sorry, it's going to have a float of 15, just so that it can set the radius to 15, so that it has a larger scale and all that. And you have two of them, mainly because you want a negative and a positive. Negative and a positive because if you want to go side to side, you need one to go to the right and one to the left. So you need those to be there as well. So that's really good. So that's the main reason of it. So essentially you need custom event, and then you need to have a get actor for vector. Now the reason for this is that when you interact with the ball, it'll actually allow you to have... with the vector, it'll actually allow you to go forward and all that. So the thing with this is with the landed part, this is for when you land. Essentially, if you landed on something, say on the collision and all that, if it recognizes you have a land, it gives you one extra jump. The problem with this is that if you didn't include any of this, you can jump infinitely, and you would just keep going up and up. So that's a problem you would have originally. And this is where this comes into place, because if it's true, say it's true and you're jumping and you're there and you manage to get it, you're going to wall jump from the wall. If it's false, however, and you land on the ground and it doesn't recognize the collision of another wall, you'll just be able to jump normally, and then you have to reset the jump count to 1 again, mainly because if you set it to more than 1, you'd have 2 jumps like double jump, but you just do it in a straight upward line, and pretty much all that. So basically this part is allowing you another extra jump. Now we have to go over to here, which essentially this is the part where it sends you in the directions and allows you to do that. So if it's false, the branch is going to make it so false. If the branch is true, you get a jump. You're gonna set the jump count, and you're gonna add a addition. So essentially, if the condition is let me read this. Yeah, basically same thing. It's gonna set the count to 1, because if it's false, so say if it doesn't hit the wall, you need to reset the jump count to 1, and you need to add another jump back into it, because if you didn't, you wouldn't be able to jump again. So it's basically a branch. If it's true, the character will jump. The set jump count, addition float, or is this integer? I believe this is integer actually. Yeah, integer. Add another jump so that he can jump again. The condition is if it's less than 2. So basically, if it doesn't recognize that you have 2 jumps, it has to automatically reset it back to 1 jump and all that. The break hit part. Now this part is essentially finding the character's location. So it needs to find out where the character is currently in the world, because it can't automatically do that. So what you need is a break hit result, and you need to split the pins for the distance or the locations and all that. And what you're going to need is a negative float. So location X will go into the negative float. Get actor location, split the pin, and return value X so that it goes into the negative. So therefore, it's trying to find out where the actor's location in the X value is at the moment. So that when you jump, say when you jump going upwards or like going to the right, it needs to recognize that you are able to be launched in that direction and all that. Or just to find out where in the world you are, and to determine whether there's a collision, that you touch a collision. So you're then going to get a sign float. So basically a float returns -1 if A is less than 0, that yada, all that. You then need to return the value into a negative, into a multiplication float, sorry. And I set it to 550 because this is basically if I'm able to jump over our ledges and all that. And then you want to set it into, you need to get a launch character, because then it needs to send you upwards so that you can get up on top of it. And what it's going to do is that with the X, it's going to launch you in velocity Y upwards and also velocity Z, so that you go either way. And what you want to do with velocity Z is get the target jump Z velocity, because when you jump, since it's a 2D, we need to get a Z velocity, and the character movement as well, because basically where the character is moving to. The reason we don't have X is because there is no X values, because it's a 2D game. We just needed to get the X value by here due to the fact we do not want to change it. Otherwise, it would mess up the game a lot, and therefore it would add in an X value, and then it could result in any unholy problems. And that's pretty much it in terms of animation, because like I talked about the handle animation, it basically sets everything, the idle, the running, the shoot attack, and all that. So for now, I'm going to leave it there for this part. Also, yeah, so this is the same part. Basically, if it's false, you don't wall jump anymore, and all that. Overall, that's it. The next part will be to do with the camera, I reckon, in the character, and then I'll go over the robot enemies. So thank you very much for watching, and until next time.